Welcome once again to the Way Lessons. This time looks pretty dark. The video looks dark today. Let me see if it has anything to do with this. Yep, sure does. Okay, so we're still on Jesus, son of Mary. And we continue. And as always, I'm going to have to again remind you, those that have been, that have been following and those that are watching for the first time, I am not the author of these lessons. I am just a messenger reading from the mother book. So, now let's continue. Exodus 6, verse 28. And it came to pass on the day when the Lord spake unto Moses in the land of Egypt, verse 29, that the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, I am the Lord. Speak thou unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I say unto thee. Verse 30, and Moses said before the Lord, behold, I am of uncircumcised lips, and how shall Pharaoh hearken unto me? Moses wasn't circumcised. All the males of Israel were circumcised. None of the women were. Though, and Miriam would have been one of the uncircumcised lips. Exodus 7. It doesn't mean the lips on your face, in other words. Exodus 7, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Moses, see, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Verse 2. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of his land. Verse 3. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. Miriam, as the representative or high priestess of Isis, as was revealed yesterday in yesterday's video, would have been the goddess in bodily form. The rest of this story is pretty well known. I hope you can see by now that wherever you see Moses, put in Miriam's name, and it becomes clearer. The above circumcision verse is an example. Why was Pharaoh so reluctant to let Miriam and the others go? Because Miriam, as the high priestess of Isis, represented in a spiritual and religious / political sense his authority to rule. Isis was an integral part of Egyptian society. I think you can understand his reluctance. The Exodus, in fact, did happen, but not in the magnitude of people the Bible suggests. The order of Isis was transferred from a centralized location in Egypt to the surrounding city fortresses in Canaan and to the surrounding countryside. The headquarters was moved to a city known as Hazor, and various temples were established in other cities such as Jerusalem. The loss of the Isis order was a blow the Egyptians never recovered from. But from the offspring it produced was to become a powerful nation, and its people would change the course of humanity. This was the birth of Israel, the Hebrew nation. And I'm talking about the real ones, not the fake pretenders walking around today, who are all mostly from Eastern Europe and England. I'm not talking about them fakers. The next step in the Doma plan to bring civilization to mankind, for it is in these people that a new and advanced concept of spiritual enlightenment would be born. The concept of a single spiritual force that, unlike the gods and idols of more primitive societies, would reside not in a single nation or city, but in the hearts and minds of all those who believed. The priestesses of Isis carried this knowledge outward from Egypt and gave it to the nomads and city people in the surrounding countries. They forged a nation of diverse peoples into one people and one God. And wherever you were, God was there with you. I know this sounds obvious to you today, but imagine how powerful this was to those who had never heard it. Now that you understand why Pharaoh did not want to let them go and why they had to go, let's see what happened. Everyone knows of the plagues that were heaped on the Egyptians. These should always be remembered as a sign of what was done to bring you the word of God. We will go now to the last and greatest of these plagues, the final measure. Exodus 11, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Moses, Yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go hence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out hence altogether. Verse 2. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. Verse 3. And the Lord God gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. Verse 4. And Moses said, Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt. Verse 5. And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. Verse 6. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it any more. Verse 7. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. Verse 8. And all these thy servants shall come down unto me, and bow down themselves unto me, saying, Get thee out, and all the people that follow thee. And after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in a great anger. Verse 9. And the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. Verse 10. And Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, so that he would not let the children of Israel go out of his land. These are the verses preceding the final plague. Notice these two verses. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. As you can see, the people of Egypt liked the Hebrews. And the next verse about Miriam is even more revealing. As high priestess of their greatest goddess, she would have held a position second only to Pharaoh. Remember that the Egyptians still felt this way after all that had happened. The next event would convince Pharaoh and the other priest that it would be wise to let the servants of Isis go. And isn't it strange also, very curious, how the synagogue of Satan and its acolytes have now used the term ISIS to reference a so-called terrorist group. It's done on purpose. Exodus 12, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, verse 2, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Verse 3, Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Verse 5, Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. Verse 6, And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Verse 7, And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorpost of the houses, wherein they shall eat it. Verse 8, And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Verse 9, Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire his head, with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof. Verse 10, And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. Verse 11, And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. Verse 12, For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. Verse 13, and the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you. When I smite the land of Egypt. Verse 14, and this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. What's good about reading it in the Old English is that it's closer to the Greek that it was translated from. A lot of these Bibles today, a lot of them, most of them, are so polluted, so translated, interpreted wrong. You wouldn't you wouldn't believe how what they've taken out, what they replaced certain words with, because they're trying to keep the truth. They every time they produce one of these new versions of the Bible, they pollute something, they pervert something, they change shit. They have to keep the truth away from you. So the older the Bible you get, the better. Remember Mike telling you about the lamb? Why Joseph said the Egyptians hated sheep shepherds? The above explains why they wanted you to think this. Remember, Isis made her priestesses sacrifice a male lamb and then smear its blood over the altar and doorway. It was thought that this lamb's blood would purify and sanctify. This is only the first lamb association they tried to hide. The real blockbuster is in the New Testament. 29. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. 30. And Pharaoh was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. Oh, sorry. I just repeated the same one. 30. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. 31. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, Rise up, and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go serve the Lord as ye have said. And there's a reason why I say it like that, in case you're wondering. Israel. Is Ra God? You better start understanding what these people are doing. They've taken your religion, they've perverted it, they regurgitated it back the way they want you to follow it, and you people out there believe it. You believe these so-called leaders, these manipulators. There's no difference between the socialism and the religion. It's both one and the same. It's hard for a lot of you to understand that, especially the socialists that think that they have nothing to do with religion. The atheist socialist pigs. They're the most confused motherfuckers ever. They have no idea they're being used. See, the people that fund you, the people that actually pull the strings, they're very religious. They know who is God, but they don't want you to know who is God. They don't want you to believe in God. Okay. Let me see. Let me see. Thus, the people of Israel were set free. Exodus 13, verse 21. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, to go by day and night. Verse 22. He took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night, from before the people. And let me take before we continue, let me take a little swig of water. Anybody doubt that this was a Doma worship? AKA, what do they call them now? They got different names. UP something. UFO. Ugh. Look what it did in the next chapter. Exodus 14, verse 5. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this? That we have let Israel go from serving us. Verse 6. And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. Verse 7. And he took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt and captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with an high hand. I'm just reading it the way it's spelled here. Verse 9. But the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pi Hahiroth, before Baal Zephon. Verse 10. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. And they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. Verse 11. And they said unto Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us? Wait a minute. Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Verse 12. Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. Verse 13. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will shew to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Verse 14. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Verse 15. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward. Verse 16. But lift thou up thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. Verse 17. And behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon all his host, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. Verse 18. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. Verse 19. And the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face, and stood behind them. Verse 20. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. Verse 21. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And I want to pause here. In recent years, there have been so-called scholars, most of them members of the secret societies, the initiates of the flame, trying to give these verses some sort of symbolic, supernatural, mystical meaning. Oh, it's not, don't take it literally. Don't take it literally. You know, I'm telling you, take it literally. Don't believe the lying pieces of shit in your various churches, your synagogues. Don't believe them. They're liars. Verse 22. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. Verse 23. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. Verse 24. And it came to pass that in the morning watch, the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians. Verse 25. And took off their chariot wheels, that they drove them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. Verse 26. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots and upon their horsemen. Verse 27. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. Verse 28. And the waters returned, and covered the chariots, and the horsemen, and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. Verse 29. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. Verse 30. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. Verse 31. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Just for your information, Isis parted the river every day for her priestesses to cross over to her island. I'm trying to show you here that at this point in the development of man, the Doma were taking direct action in his affairs. My main point, however, is this. From its beginnings in Egypt, the concept of God, as you have known it, is about the goddess Isis. Throughout the rest of the Bible and into the New Testament, it is she who is directing man's affairs. Remember, though, she is merely acting as the messenger. She is not a god or goddess. She has simply been mistaken for that which she sought to bring you, the Word of God. If we had time, I could go through and show you her hand at each and every step, particularly in the acts of Deborah, David, and Solomon. We do not have the time. I would encourage you to read and find for yourselves, however, the hidden footsteps of Isis in all that you thought you knew. Read all that you can, both in the Bible and other sources. It will only reinforce what we have talked about so far and prepare you for what we are about to talk about next. The son of Isis. And that's S-O-N. Don't get it twisted. That's what the initiates of the flame want you to be, confused. Okay. It's a half hour. Let me see. Let me see here. Okay, I can go a little longer, especially since the camera seems to be working fine. And it's going to take forever to upload this, so let me take a little break here. Way 11, the Messiah Projects. Jesus, son of Isis. Get ready to get butthurt. I know the truth hurts. And was there until the death of Herod that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. The New Testament, Matthew 2, verse 15. Isis, nature goddess, whose worship originating in ancient Egypt, but actually it's even older than that, gradually extended throughout the lands of the Mediterranean world and became one of the chief religions of the Roman Empire. The worship of Isis resisted the rise of Christianity and lasted until the 6th century AD. And here are some quotes from famous people, I suppose. The ultimate end of your education was to make you a good wife. Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, English society figure. I wonder which society. There's so many of them. Man, if I would get a book called Occult Theocracy, it will blow your mind how many of these secret society roaches exist. Some of them became extinct. Others are still around, but you wouldn't even know it. A lot of them changed their names, and you wouldn't even know it. Oh, and this Lady Montagu advised Lady Boot on bringing up her own daughter to make her happy in a virgin state. The hell does that mean? I was sent forth from God's power, and I have come to those who reflect on me, and have been found. Among those who seek after me, look upon me, you who reflect upon me, and your hearers hear me. You who are waiting for me, take me to yourselves, and do not banish me from your sight, and do not make your voice hate me, nor your hearing. Do not be ignorant of me anywhere or at any time. Be on your guard. Do not be ignorant of me, for I am the first and the last. I am the honored one and the scorned one. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother and the daughter. I am barren, and many are my sons. I am she whose wedding is great, and I have not taken a husband. I am the solace of my labor pains. I am the bride and the bridegroom. I am she whose image is great in Egypt. The thunder. Perfect Mind, the Nag Hammadi Library. And James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James, and he surnamed them, and I'm going to try to pronounce this, but I'm not going to do a good job, Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder. Mark 3 verse 17. That's chapter 3 verse 17. The above verse sets the tone for what we will be talking about in this part. In part 1, I wanted you to see that the foundations of the Hebrew and Christian religions came from the worship of Isis. Over the years, the Hebrews continued to worship Isis under the name of Asherah. the lioness of Israel. Eventually, the Hebrews divided themselves into two religions, one still worshiping Asherah, the other worshiping a male god of their own creation. Oh, you rabbis, if any of you are watching, you're ripping your beards out of your faces, those goddamn ugly little dreadlocks you be having. You're ripping them out of your head, aren't you? I feel bad for you, rabbis, because you've been lied to as well. The reason for this split can be blamed on the time period in which they lived. Men were quickly dominating earth societies. It was viewed by many in that era to be a sign of weakness to associate your religion with what they considered the weaker sex. Now, into this muddle, you must add the fundamental differences in thought between males and females. In primitive cultures, this difference is much greater. I'm referring to the basic hunter/gatherer type distinctions. We know today that much of the emotional and reasoning differences between males and females is attributable to cultural norms and the differences in education. Males and females receive, but there is still a core difference between the sexes that cannot be blamed on environment. These differences are internal. There are basic hormonal differences that evolved over the years as survival traits. But even further inside exists a fundamental difference in male and female cause or souls. All these differences came into play as man began to develop his own religious and social structures. Nowhere was this difference felt more strongly than in religion. Women think differently than men. Those of you in academic fields can argue as much as you like over this statement, but it will not change the fact in the least bit. Females are not simply males with reproductive organs. It is important to understand this difference in order to see what effect it had on the Hebrew and Christian religions. The Doma originally gave this religion to man via the priestesses. Later on, male priests. Do you ever wonder? And even to this day, while the male priests wear robes, and what are robes? They're basically dresses, aren't they? Look like somebody took somebody's job, it looks like, huh? Oh boy. Later on, the male priest would take over the religion. In the Bible, you have writings gathered together in one book that came from two separate sources. The first source is the Doma priestess-based religion. The second source is from the male god-male priests religion. Anyone who has read the Bible has noticed the basic difference of philosophy between different chapters and different testaments. There are supposed to be two different forces talked about in the Bible. One is the force of good or God, and the other is the force of evil or Satan. I have explained to you about the war and Satan's defeat at the hands of the Doma. So what then if Satan was no longer influencing man's religion, produced the differences found in the Bible? The difference you see in the Bible are a result of the differences between the male and female religions. To the female religion, the male religion repressed the forces of evil. To the male priests, goddess worship was seen as evil. Different parts of the Bible seem different because they were the result of different religions. Much of the Old Testament is the result of male religious forces. Much of the New Testament is the result of female religious forces. Let me see if I can make this a little clearer for you. It is vital that you understand this. Let's divide the period of time from the end of the war until the present into 3 periods. The first period is from the end of the war until Abraham. The second is from Abraham until shortly after Muhammad. The third is from shortly after Muhammad to the present. During the first period, the Doma introduced basic laws and civilization. The people were strongly matriarchal. Let me say that again. Matriarchal. Matriarchal. Now you understand what the Matrix means. The mother. Oh, you just thought it was a movie produced from Hollywood, huh? No, you see, them bastards know the truth. They just keep it hidden. Oh, boy. The people were strongly matriarchal or female-based in their religions. The second period saw the introduction of advanced religious philosophies via the Messiah projects. During this time, mankind was left more and more on its own. Males, because of their physical strength, began to assert more and more control over both society and religion. Mankind began to shift from a matriarchal society to a patriarchal one. The third period saw these patriarchal forces overwhelm and destroy the matriarchal forces. Men established firm control over all aspects of earth, society, and religion. This control has existed to the present day. We have been talking about the second period throughout this way message. It is a time when male and female religions were warring with each other. This war was eventually won by the males. They destroyed the female control of certain religions and did not destroy the religion itself. They absorbed both it and the masses of followers. They killed the shepherdess and stole her flock. They made the laws she had given them their own. The females did not go down without a fight, though, nor did the Doma sit idly by. During a brief 1500-year window, the attempt was made to balance the forces. This effort was focused on the insertion of Doma-instructed stormtroopers, if you will, the great teachers. For a brief while, the Doma thought they had succeeded. One by one, however, they saw their efforts absorbed into the growing patriarchal power base. It taught them a very valuable lesson. They realized that even though they taught mankind advanced concepts, man himself needed time to advance. Mankind needed time to develop its own internal maturity and the technological knowledge necessary to make physical strength alone less of a dominant factor. And so the Doma decided to wait. They would continue to observe mankind, then, when they thought them advanced socially, technologically, and morally enough, they would try to make contact once again. They would send someone not to teach anything new, but rather to refresh their memories. If mankind had advanced far enough, could handle the social and religious implications that knowledge of the Dhamma would bring, then they should be ready for the final step in their education. It will be a time when they would reach out and ask their teachers to return, not as children seeking to hide behind their mother's skirts, but as young adults ready to join the adult community of the collective. And who are the collective? Huh? You don't remember? Better go watch the first video again. That time is now. This is the purpose of the way. If they see you handle this knowledge and apply it to your lives, then you are ready to knock at the door, and they are willing to answer it. This is the promise, the covenant they made with your ancestors. Keep this in mind as you read all that is to come. Remember also that your actions will speak louder than words. Now let us get back to our message. This war of control between the male and female forces can be vividly seen in the Bible. And also on that new batch of Star Wars movies. What was it called? The Force Awakens? You see how these bastards show you in their so-called media, in their so-called pop culture, their movies and their films, their books. They put you the truth in it. And the lies on the news. It's the complete opposite. You get lies on the so-called news, and you get the truth in the so-called movies. Look at the following verses very closely. Isaiah 49 verse 15. Can a woman forget her sucking child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? Yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget thee. Job 21 verse 24. His breasts are full of milk, and his bones are moistened with marrow. Ezekiel 8 verse 14. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. The first verse is God reinforcing her commitment. That's right. That's what I said. The first verse is God reinforcing her commitment to never forget the faithful. Notice what God compares his likeness to. The next is ridiculous even by the patriarchal father standards. The last is very important because it illustrates that indeed there were women inside the temple at Jerusalem worshiping Asherah. Anyone interested should read the legend of Isis and Osiris. Tammuz is the Hebrew version of Osiris. He was the consort of Isis and was killed by one of the rebel Anunnaki. Osiris's killer was a god named Set. Setin? The point I'm trying to make here is this. The first two lines were obviously written or came from a female perspective. The second verse has been altered to read his breasts when everyone knows it should have been her breasts. The first verse doesn't actually come right out and say female, so they left it alone. The second verse did, so it had to be changed, and the word hit, and the word sub and the word is substituted. Oh, and the word his substituted. Both verses are seen as coming from God and are viewed as holy by church officials and lay people. The last verse, mentioning the priestesses in their temple at Jerusalem, is now made out to be diabolical and the work of the devil. What we have here are the three basic weapons used by the patriarchal fathers to defeat the priestesses. 1. If it sounds holy and does not contain a she or her, etc., just use it like it is. Then say it's the male god speaking. 2. If it is holy but contains a female identifier, change it to a male one. Then use it as if it came from a male god. 3. Make every instance of female worship and anything associated with her appear evil. These are the three main weapons used to destroy the female power structure, change the meaning of female doctrine, and absorb the theology and followers into the male church. Ain't it funny, though, how many of these so-called priests in these churches, and rabbis as well, have homosexual tendencies? Ain't it funny how so many of them who get caught are also perverts that molest children? The men who later wrote what we consider the modern Bible could literally edit from the beginning of history until their present time. They removed as much of the female-related material as possible. Nowhere was this done to a greater degree than in the New Testament, specifically with the person we call Jesus Christ. I have tried to prepare you as much as possible for what I am about to say next. I showed you that your religions began in Egypt with this order of Isis. I have shown you where the male writers tried to erase her traces or change her words and call them their own. I hope that you understand my purpose was not to hurt or destroy your faith. It was simply time to tell the truth. Here then is what this has all been leading up to. Jesus was sent by the Doma. He was the result of the artificial insemination of a priestess of Isis named Mary. He was sent by his mother, not his father. His disciples were female. His supporters were female. His teachings were female given. He was not the son of an all-powerful male god. He was the offspring of a female Doma known as Isis. He was not God in the flesh. He was a prophet sent by Isis to bring you the word of God. And he did not die for your sins. He died from them. God did not kill him. Your ancestors did. The religion that you have come to call Christianity has little to do with what Jesus stood for and the message he tried to teach you. Before we go any further, I wish to say something specifically to the daughters of earth. The suffering and anguish this religion and others that sprang from it, it's not just Christianity, have caused you was never intended. The Doma have seen how you have been made scapegoats. They have seen how you have been made to carry the cross of mankind's sin upon your backs. The cross of original sin. They have seen how you are made to be servants of men. They have heard the laughter of those who have taken what was yours and who have abused you in so many ways. Believe me now, daughters of earth, your sisters on high have not forgotten you, and it is you who, in the end, shall have the final laugh. She who laughs last laughs best. And I'm going to stop it right there. Let those of you, I know a lot of you fainted. A lot of you are probably committing suicide. Most of you are just thinking this is all funny, ha ha ha, laughing, like the author said here. And some of you, very few of you, are going to actually think about what was revealed this evening in a serious manner. Just want to end by saying that I don't hate these various offshoots of the religions. I don't. I don't even hate the people that unknowingly follow the lies. They don't know any better. What I hate are the lies, the hypocrites, the liars, those in authority who lie to you every single day, whether they're spewing politics or spewing religion. As I said earlier in this vid, it's the same goddamn shit. They own both. They rule both. If they can't get you through religion, they get you through politics. There is no difference between their political system and their religious system. It's the same old mystery religion of Babylon. Make no mistake. And while y'all are killing yourselves in the Middle East, fighting and killing yourselves in Europe and the United Snakes, the real puppet masters are laughing. They're laughing at you. Because once you've killed each other and you're gone, then they can establish their new world order. That's it. Put some outro music. Oh, beautiful, peaceful music.